All right, let's put this together and solve. So it says find the solutions of sine x plus pi over 4 minus sine x minus pi over 4 equals 0 on the interval 0 to 2 pi. All right, so this is a sum identity here. And so for sine, remember the symbol's going to change, but it goes sine of A. So I'm going to call this A and B here. And for the red, so it'd be sine of x, cosine of B, which is pi over 4. And then sine symbol stays the same, plus cosine of A times the sine of B, which again, you could just go to the unit circle to get that formula. I'm going to do the exact same thing again. This time, I want to do this one, and I'll do this one in blue. This is my A, this is my B. So it is sine of A cosine of B. And sine symbol stays the same. So this is a negative, this is a negative. So instead of putting a negative here, it's like distribute through. So instead of it being a negative there, this is actually going to become a plus. Now, the reason why, let me do this one more time. Let me do it as a negative here, because we say it stays the same, is this technically should be all one thing. So I'll write it out the rest of the way. Cosine of x, sine of pi over 4, like that. Okay, so sine, subtraction, sine, subtraction here. But because we're subtracting this whole thing, we need to subtract this whole thing. So now, what does that mean? I would distribute that negative through, and you'll find out this becomes a positive. But these two, you see how they're opposites of each other? These two would simplify out. So I'm not even going to figure out what that is, because I know those ends up canceling each other out. They're the opposites. This, when I distribute, this is going to be a positive, and this is going to become a positive there. And so I would have 2 cosine x sine pi over 4. I just have 2 times this. Okay, so now let's go unit circle, or if you think of hand trick here, this is pi over 4 is your middle finger. So pi over 4, you bend your middle finger, flip your hand. I'm getting 2 y's, because there's 2 fingers on top, and your h is always 2, because it's square root a total of 4 fingers. That's that value. And so we'd have 2 times cosine x times this. Now, these 2 2's will simplify out. So I'm left with the square root of 2 times cosine of x. You could write it this way, or cosine x with the square root of 2 over there. But I don't want you to get confused. It doesn't belong inside the cosine. So this right there is what I'm getting equals 0. All of this the whole time was supposed to equal 0. So let me add that in here. All right. So now to solve this, I want to know where, if I solve for 0, I would then divide by square root of 2. And I want to know where cosine x equals 0. The only answer I'm getting, if you think about the unit circle, where does cosine equal 0? Well, cosine's x. X equals 0 only when the unit circle is on these 2 spots here and here, which this would be pi over 2. You'd have a 0, 1, and here would be 3 pi over 2, where we'd have 0, -1. So those are the only values I'm getting. I'm getting that x equals pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2. Now we can solve this. InSolve will only give us one answer. So instead of InSolving, I'm going to check this, going to my graph. So I'm going to go over here, new document. I'm going to go to graphs. I'm going to type this in. So we have trig of sine x plus pi over 4. And then I want to subtract sine of x minus fraction pi over 4. When you graph, it should always do it in radians, so I don't have to worry about the mode. I press enter. Now our domain, it said from 0 to 2 pi. Now remember, to check on this interval, it'll cut it off at 0, so I'm going to do actually negative 0.2 just to have just a little bit on this side, and we want to take this only to 2 pi. All right, now I want to know where we get the values 0. Where does this equal 0? So tab, the other equation is 0. So that's what I'm wondering is where do these two cross each other? Menu, analyze graph, intersection. I get this value, and menu, analyze graph, intersection. It looks like there's one more there. So those are my two answers. And so if I do Control Doc to add a page, go to calculator. What is pi divided by 2? Pi, oops, divided by 2. And then the other answer we had was 3 pi divided by 2. And let me put the pi in there, 3 pi divided by 2. We got those two answers. Is that what the calculator said that we should have? Let's go back over here. Yes, it is. It looks like we solved this correctly. So as you can see here, our answers match up with pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2, and those are the only intersections. So we did do it correctly. Now you can try this one.